Thank you for joining me for another episode of RIA Collective. I'm your host, Charlie Van Derven. I got a great guest for you today. In fact, gosh, I've been working in this industry quite a while, and I've gotten to meet a lot of people. Johann is one of the most interesting people I've met. He's in an industry that, frankly, I think most of you know is probably third, maybe fourth on the least trusted industries in the U.S. That's not cool, Johann, right?
Absolutely.
Johann's got I think I can name legal, automobile dealers, and financial services falls in there near the bottom. Johann's got a PhD in ethics, so he brings a whole different perspective to our industry. So we're going to have a really fun conversation, and you're going to learn something about Johann's journey in this industry. Johann Klaassen, thank you so much for joining me today on RIA Collective. I'm excited to tap into that mind of yours because I'll tell you, it's different than most of the advisors I get to work with.
Well, I'm happy to be here today, Charlie. It's a lovely opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And Johann, our mission at RIA Collective, of course, is to demonstrate all the different paths that people can take in this industry. I've met too many advisors over the years that, they got their degree in financial planning or finance or whatever that was. Took a job at one of the big wirehouses and found out that they were in an environment that they didn't expect to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to a lot of the migration to independence that I've seen in a couple of decades. And that's really just kind of speeding up. So, our goal at RIA Collective is to tap into your knowledge and your experience to really bring advice to that younger crop of advisors. Maybe it's, second career advisor who knows they want to be on the independent side because they can serve their clients in a more fiduciary way, in that position in the industry. So before we get into that type of advice, Johann, you started before you became an advisor, you were an educator, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I certainly have an unusual path. That's true.
Yeah.
I came out of I did my undergraduate degree here at St. John's College in Santa Fe. Great books, no gym was the sort of unofficial motto at the time. 400 students. We just start with Homer and Plato and Aristotle, and you work your way forward.
Yeah.
So I came out of that, very much the liberal arts graduate.
Cool.
Didn't know quite what to do next. Went to graduate school in philosophy, ethics and social philosophy.
Nice.
Wrote my dissertation on moral emotions, guilt and shame and regret.
Wow.
Which was so much fun to write about, because every time I turned around, I found something else I ought to feel bad about. But my daughter was born while I was working on that. So I got to be an at-home dad for a couple of years. That was excellent.
Wonderful.
But then we did the gypsy faculty thing for a couple of years, waiting to see if a tenure track position might come up. And it just, we found ourselves, my wife and our daughter, we found ourselves in Arkansas. And the only other positions that were available at the time were also sort of in the southeast.
Yeah.
And my wife grew up in Colorado. She said, you know what? No, we're done. So we moved back to Colorado Springs, where she had family. And I was a graduate student. I had done a little bit of work in how markets impact the organization of societies, right? Or how societies impact the organization of markets. I guess it goes both directions.
Yeah.
And consequently, there were a few positions available in Colorado Springs in the financial services industry, broadly understood. And I found an entry to working for T. Rowe Price, the mutual fund company. They have an inbound call center there. And so I got, training in how the markets work directly, how to make the markets work. And I spent my days for a few months talking to people who would call in to say, oh, I want to move from fund X to fund Y. And I can click, there you go, it's all done. Yeah. But this was during late 2000, early 2001, when the dot-com funds were dropping, 80% in their value, more or less. And part of my job was to talk the little old ladies out of taking their money out of the .com fund.
Of course.
And that
How
didn't sit
does
well.
I was going to say, how does that sit with a guy who, philosophy and ethics and yeah.
Well, on the one hand, some of the least ethical people I know are moral philosophers, but because they know all the excuses, right?
We could
I should
unpack
say,
that.
probably know all the excuses, all the ways we can argue for ourselves as unique cases.
Sure.
But it bothered me immensely. That wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And
Yeah.
When the company would send portfolio managers in to talk with us about what's going on in their particular fund that they manage, and to spend a couple of days skiing up in the mountains in Colorado.
Sure.
I would ask questions about, why do we have this stock in the portfolio, whatever, doesn't matter. Don't we know that they have a horrible human rights record in Honduras? Or don't we know that they are listed in the top 3 polluters in the United States? And they would tell me not to ask those questions.
Right.
It's not my job.
Yeah.
But you can't really tell a philosopher not to ask questions. That's kind of our whole thing.
Yeah.
So I started looking around. I knew I had heard about social investing, or ethical investing, or whatever we wanted to call it, during these courses I had taken as a graduate student. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I can find something in that. I started looking around, and I found the folks at First Affirmative Financial Network, based in Colorado Springs, there also. And I started talking with them. It took a couple of months to figure out quite how we might work together. But I started working for them in July of 2001, and worked for them for 12 years almost.
Yeah, I chatted with our mutual friend. I'll call him acquaintance because I can't call him a friend of mine yet. But I chatted with George Gay earlier today, so I'm excited for George to be on the podcast in the coming months. Here, we got some time carved out for that, and of course, the conference, the ESG conference, is there next week, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, we're recording today just because this isn't going to air even for 6 weeks or so, but October 13th today. So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, George is still an excellent friend, and was he made it possible, right? He hired me out of that untenable position at T. Rowe Price, and we found ways for us to to be mutually beneficial, let's say. So I did help First Affirmative grow substantially during the 12 years I was there, and I went from, again, being just somebody who was trying to figure out all the buttons to push, to being a member of their investment committee, and again, the guy who figured out which buttons to push in order to make the decisions that we made as an investment committee to make those things happen. But toward the end of that, my friend Kimberly Griego-Kyle, my business partner, who had been operating a RIA here in Santa Fe for a long time, and had been an advisor with First Affirmative. She and I were talking about some small institutional potential clients, small nonprofits and such, that she didn't know quite how to approach and wanted some help. And I had done some nonprofit work while I was a graduate student in St. Louis. And so we started talking together about how we might work on those kinds of cases, how we might share the profits, share the proceeds. And the more we talked, the more we realized that really what we ought to do is have the two of, join forces, just the two of us, combine our knowledge, combine our assets, our client assets, and improve the fees to the client, and improve the fees paid to us by taking middlemen out. So we started doing that in 2013. Afterwards, for the next couple of years, we got so many people came up to us at conferences, at the SRI conference, or ESG for Impact, I'm sorry. Used to be known as SRI in the Rockies. But they, a lot of people would come on to us at that conference, or at one of the social investment forum conferences, or, there's a handful of others. They would say, "Oh, it's so brave of you to make this big jump and to set yourselves up as an independent RIA." And we didn't really see it that way. We had at the end of 2012, we had gone through so many different scenarios, so many possible, plans of how could things, what would happen if we scenario plan out, if the market dropped by this much, could we still manage if this, planning all these different things that might happen. And the longer we looked at it, the more sort of it just made sense for us to be partners rather than dependent on anyone else.
Yeah. And one of the unique things about you, I know everybody's, I've met so many great people in this industry over the years, right? People with a very pure mission.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that yours is any purer than anybody else's, but you express that. That's the foundation of your business. We all want to make a fine living and sustain ourselves, right? But you're doing it, helping. Listen, I'm not trying to bring anybody else down, but you've got such a pure approach to your investments, to the people you serve, to the mission to the mission in working with nonprofits and people who might not otherwise have the type of representation that they have in you and Kimberly.
Yeah. So, well, right at the front of our website, Horizons, plural, SFS for Sustainable Financial Services.com. Right on the front page, it says at the top, invest like you give a damn. And that's, that really is how we operate. We do want to be able, yes, of course, we want to be able to support ourselves and support our families and participate in our communities by giving, by through our donations and so on. But we also want to be able to serve our community by providing financial planning to folks who can't get it otherwise, providing investment advice to folks who fall far below the minimums that most of our colleagues charge. So that is an important part of our approach, is just to say that we'll take clients who other advisors won't, and we'll help them to figure out exactly how we can put their financial criteria, their investment needs and their risk and return criteria, put that together with their social criteria, their ethical values, their religious values, if that's where they're coming from. So it's definitely, it's a much better fit, let's say, for me as an ethicist, as somebody who's worked on that. And when it just is a much better fit for us to be able to offer that kind of service to folks who need it. So
that's awesome. We've got an audience of people that listen that, there's a variety of people, but really the core of our listeners are, let's say that advisor who's 7 years out of college, joined one of the big firms, maybe didn't fall into an environment that they expected, right? So I think that when you serve the firm first, your clients naturally come second. People who might maybe walked out and they feel, they had this altruistic purpose in financial services, who again landed in an environment that isn't necessarily what they expected or what they want for their future. So, ideally we've got listeners who are trying to figure out how do I make that change? Where are the firms that embody my ideals as a human? And as a cooperative human, probably a better way to say it. Where are you and Kimberly taking the RIA, Johann? Are you looking at, just in case there's somebody listening who says, wait a second, I resonate with what Johann's saying. Are you growing? Are you adding advisors? Is that something that the part of the mission?
Yeah, I was going to ask you the philosopher's question and say it depends on what you mean by that, and ask you to elaborate. But yeah, you did. I didn't even have to ask.
Hey, I've got a minor in philosophy. I've got a minor in philosophy, Johann. Yeah, from Northern Arizona, not too far down the road from you.
There we go. No.
Yeah.
I actually at one point had an interview with them to join their faculty, but that would have been in like the mid-90s. Anyway,
I was there. I was there at the time.
okay, well,
Yeah.
I missed you by that much.
That much.
Well, so yeah, Horizons, let's see, in 2020, we picked up 3 advisors from elsewhere. There was a flurry of consolidation and spinoffs and various things like that resulted in a handful of advisors who specialize in sustainable investment, kind of being at loose ends. And so we ended up with 3 of those folks joining us late in 2020 as IARs. Prior to that, it had just been Kimberly and me, which, that was fine. That was wonderful. But we knew that we had my expertise in portfolio construction and my experience with the funds and managers in this space. We knew that we could put something together that would be able to serve other advisors. So we picked those folks up and a couple of other RIAs. So we have peer-to-peer arrangements with small RIAs that for folks who want to spend their time working with their clients, not working on the investments in their clients' accounts, they can outsource that to us. Reasonable. I actually was talking with somebody recently who's considering moving from an existing RIA to work with us instead. And we're actually the payout is better for him. So, we have a reasonable, override, I guess, is one way to talk about it, that we take for our client or for our affiliates. But we're always we're interested in talking with folks who have that as their mission, who have sustainable clients, or if they have, 1 or 2 clients who are really interested in sustainable investment and really don't know how to build those kind of portfolios. Well, I've been doing it for 20 years more.
That's awesome.
20,
what a great resource.
Yeah, 22 years, something like that.
It's
the track records are there and so on. So it's terrific. But yeah, we're happy to talk with folks who, especially if they're sort of aligned with our values.
Cool. Yeah.
Happy to talk with folks, help them.
Well, I think that's why this interview will resonate with people, right? Because we've got, you learned it at T Rowe, right? Certainly there's some dirty things with some of the some of the investments, the indexes that are anyway. So if it aligns, I'm happy that you're open to talk to people and
sure.
And I some questions about
two other things. One is that George Gay, you mentioned earlier, one of my first boss in the industry, really. When he hired me, he said that, it's in some respects relatively easy to teach somebody the financial services stuff, what a mutual fund is and how they operate and who they are. But it's hard to find somebody who is smart and educated and ethical, just fundamentally a good person to work with. So, yes, as much as we want to be available to talk to folks, we can't work with everybody. So we'd love to, to find like-minded folks. The other thing is that we also are happy to help folks on the other end of their careers too. I don't know if you have much of the sort of late career folks in your listenership, but we have we're working with our attorneys to figure out exactly how to structure a retirement kind of a concept where folks could join our firm, be with us for a couple of years, help get their clients used to the idea of being part of Horizons, and then ease them out while paying them.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And
so there's a retirement option as well as an early career option.
Well, and I think that impacts, the number I heard, we did a joint webinar with Coach Joe Lucas on Tuesday, so 2 days ago. And the number he brought up, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it paints the picture, is like in the next 7 years, we're going to lose 200,000 advisors. Now that was his number. And I the same face you just made, if you're watching on YouTube, it was kind of like a wow to, we got about almost 700,000 RIAs and licensed and registered reps in the country right now. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a huge percentage of that. That's, you know,
Yeah,
25% of the industry, if you will,
yeah.
almost.
And there may only be, a few thousand, maybe a few tens of thousands who have a SRI or ESG focus, right? Who
Right,
really have
right.
that as part of what they do.
Yeah.
But even, I'd be happy to talk with a handful of folks.
Yeah, yeah. There's just going to be so much. I mean, so much transition that having a nice soft landing spot for their clients that they care about, and the ability to help with the transition and be able to get compensated on the back end of it. I
Yeah,
mean, that's pretty cool of you guys.
exactly.
Yeah. So I want to ask about, listeners thinking about starting their own RIA, joining an RIA, whatever that is, as you and Kimberly embark upon a journey, outside of First Affirmative. Um, what's the most difficult, if you can speak to some of the most difficult things that you guys encountered in setting up the RIA and transitioning clients,
Mhm.
what are things that you look back on right now, Johann, and you go, you know what, that was tough. Maybe that helps our listeners a little.
Yeah, I think so. There were sort of two difficult phases. The first was um, trying to get well, um, trying to get the RIA firm established correctly and properly in the first place.
Okay. Okay.
We hired a consultant who was able to get an awful lot of it done for us, with us, but there was still a lot. It was a lot of work, and because we hadn't never done it before. It was something.
Sure.
It was brand new to us,
Yeah.
so that was difficult. And if we had that to do over again, we might very well um, spend a little more time, spend a little more money to make sure that we got as much of that done well and properly as we could. It was a little harder than it should have been from that standpoint. The other thing was that we ended up um, we were duly registered at the time. We had an RIA firm, and we were advisors of a broker dealer, small broker dealer. And so there was a little bit of friction in there, and as we had to move our clients from where they were through the broker dealer, and because the state of New Mexico, the land of manana, it took a little while to get our paperwork through. So we had to do a two-step process, repaper everything twice.
Oh, wow.
I think, we lost a couple of clients,
Yeah.
not very many, but losing clients is no fun ever.
Yeah.
But so we did lose a couple of clients along the way who were just like, you know what, no, I don't want to do this twice. But most folks were happy for us. Were excited about, the independence of it, and pleased that we were making the changes, and so they were happy to sign things. I think one of that part of it is one of the things that people dread a lot. That, oh, I have to repaper all of my clients, and then what if I have to redo that again? Oh, everybody's going to no, that's not how it turned out for us. Folks were glad to be working with us, glad to be able to continue to work with us, and consequently we're okay with the idea of doing multiple rounds of paperwork. So
Yeah. And I will tell you, not that I've had to do it, but that process is easier today, with electronic signature and all those things.
certainly, yeah.
It's a simpler process. And I want to, you mentioned that the clients you lost a few, and that is difficult because you've got personal relationships there.
Yeah.
Not to mention that, of course, that has an impact on your sustainability too.
Yes.
But you said something in that process, Johann, that I want to repeat, and I'll paraphrase it because I won't get your quote right. But people are happy for you, right? Your clients, you develop this personal relationship, and I think that that's the big fear for a lot of people who are ready to make that jump. oh my gosh, what if I can only retain 60% of the assets and I can't afford to do that?
Right.
And if I'm leaving a wirehouse and I've got the non-solicit and the non-communication, and they're going to pounce all over my clients the moment I do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I have found, and your sentiment is something that others have echoed, they're thrilled to go with you. In fact, super supportive of the step that you're making. I would add a caveat to that. So long as you're doing a good job on those personal relationships.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. So certainly those advisors who feel like, if you're going to make a move in the next 6, 12, 18 months here, relationship is going to be everything now, so
Right.
that when you make that move, you're going to retain those assets to whatever degree you can.
Yeah, and given what the market is doing right now, the relationship is everything anyway right now, right?
Yeah, right.
When we get into these kinds of timeframes. Yeah, our clients were very happy with us, and I know that some folks who are moving from bigger firms, let's say, or wirehouses or something like that, have a sense that the brand that they've been working with has been an important part of what the clients are buying. And I don't know that that's the case. I mean, maybe it is for some clients,
Yeah.
but I don't know for how many. And I think that, if we as advisors are doing a good job of actually meeting our clients where they are, and learning who they are, and serving them, that makes it more likely that the relationship is with us, not with us as a representative of company X.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when you put the big brands out there, I think, there's certainly some brand loyalty there in some cases. I interviewed someone yesterday for the podcast, and that'll come out the end of November, who has a crazy story. And you and I chatted about it before I hit the record button, but without bringing brands and name of the person in or anything at this point, actually had built an independent book through an RIA. The RIA was acquired by a big firm and lost that independent relationship with the clients. All of a sudden, the clients belong to that big firm.
Right.
2 or 3 years of the big firm has now made a split, which is why I can't say too much just yet. But 90% of those assets ended up coming with her.
Right. Cool.
Right. And that's I think that speaks to all of it, right? Where if you do a good job with that personal relationship, those assets belong to you, though the paperwork might say they belong to somebody else. Those people are going to follow you.
Yeah, the clients are ours, right?
Yeah.
Another thing about the part of the business that we're in is that so few advisors do talk with their clients about their values.
Yep.
And how we might be able to represent those in their portfolios. That when difficult times like this happen, where lots of other advisors are seeing turnover, we don't see much turnover at all. We lose a few clients here and there, but not very many, because there are so few. I mean, there are very few other people to go and work with that do the kind of deep dive into their social and personal and political values before starting the investment process.
Yeah. I think that's huge differentiator. I think that's really cool.
Very sticky clients. I mean,
Yep. Yeah.
Not personally, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. I want to chat a little bit about, and I don't know how much we need to. I don't know if it's a statement or a conversation, Johann, but I one of the reasons that we started the podcast was that I really think that in that environment where you serve a firm, clients come second, right? So if you can speak to the importance of fiduciary responsibility, and I don't know that you can accomplish that in a wirehouse type setting. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. Fiduciary obligations are something. I actually have published a couple of philosophical articles on fiduciary stuff. Both Kimberly and I have the AIF certification, and we've periodically talked about gathering up a few of the others. There are a handful of other fiduciary sorts of certifications. The number on my AIF certificate, I'm pointing back there because it's over on the wall, is number 70.
Wow.
How many thousands now? So I was an early adopter on that one. So yeah, fiduciary obligations, can they be met in the context of a wirehouse or some other large firm? Maybe. It would be very difficult, though. Independence solves that problem for me.
Yeah, yeah,
We don't. I mean, there are a couple of portfolios that I manage directly for folks, but not very many. And I don't take, a secondary. I don't take another bite at the fee apple for that, right?
yeah,
Um, so we do pay a lot of money out to sub-advisors of various sorts, either through mutual funds or through managed portfolios. But if my options were limited by my employer to things, to portfolios, funds, or separates, or whatever, that were run by them for them, and I didn't have any way to really to show the client, that there are other options, there are other portfolios we might use that would be less expensive, that might have a better track record, whatever. Uh, yeah, it would at best be difficult, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. I echo that completely. At best,
yeah, and
and
I know that the folks who have CFP certification, are fellow planning practitioners,
yeah,
um, that we are now officially being held to fiduciary standards in pretty much every client interaction.
yeah,
But it's hard to, yeah, again, how do those big firms handle the conflict?
yeah,
Disclosing, is it, isn't it Michael Kitces who says that the disclosure of conflicts is not a reason to trust you, it's a reason to be concerned and maybe to fire you,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
doesn't deal with the problem. It just says here's a problem that we're not going to deal with.
I
Um,
uh, I coach I coach some folks at the large firms.
mm,
I had a conversation, and obviously we'll leave all the details out of this, but I had a conversation where a particular coaching client of mine brought on a couple households, told me about it in our coaching call, but those households were well below the average of his book, well
oh,
below what he had stated as his minimum.
mm,
And I questioned that, and I why would you do that? Well, I got a 2% incentive for number of households,
oh,
and I flat out said, I mean, doesn't that seem like you don't want to service these people? They're way too small. You're not making what can you
you're
see
not
how
making your
that
time. Yeah,
yeah, can you see how that is a negative impact on that client relationship? And it was really, well, I had the incentive out there. And at that, and it's so hard for me to hear.
yeah,
Right. And as much as I really, really respect the guy that I coach, as
mhm,
much as he does a wonderful job with his clients, the firm dangled a carrot and every one of their advisors went after that carrot, much to the, I don't know, it didn't balance with that CFP designation.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's just one example. And it's tough for me to listen to, frankly, and I'm not afraid of expressing it, which hasn't gotten me in trouble yet, Johann, but you never know.
Only a matter
So
of time, probably,
yeah,
right?
yeah, probably so. I'll keep beating that drum though until
Yeah.
someone tells me I got to shut up. So um,
Well,
it's
I've taught those CFP ethics CE hours. Every CFP has to get those ethics hours every 2 years.
yeah,
And it was funny when I first became a CFP, I went to the CFP board and said, "Hey, can I get officially approved to go ahead and teach these CFP ethics things? Because ethics professor, CFP, now I'm a CFP. Doesn't that make sense?" And they said, "No, you still have to wait the 5 years or whatever it is."
oh,
Uh,
okay,
so, okay. I waited the 5 years and then started teaching them. But a couple of years ago, they changed the format to where now the CFP board provides almost all of the content
sure,
for those sessions. And this is not flexible enough for me. You know, I want to be able to have the conversation wander a little bit around, you know, the ethical landscape that we work in. I want to be able to talk about the difference between the minimum standards of behavior that the CFP board's rules establish, and the idea of what a virtuous financial planner might look like.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that idea, so I stopped.
Are you aware of a gentleman north of the border in Canada named Rob Barillo?
Yes.
So he's you know, again, like I said earlier with George, I can't, yeah, exactly. He's not a friend of mine, but we have spent some time together, and we've had a very similar conversation what you and I are having now. He was speaking at an event. He was for CE, you know, it was an insurance event in Canada. Gosh, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And I've read his Wealthy Buddhist book and a couple of others, and that's
Cool.
he's interesting character. Yeah, so. Yeah. So you guys have some similarities. He mentioned to me, he's like, Charlie, really, you know, you want to make a difference in your industry? Like, you know, you go get qualified to teach ethics.
Yeah.
I haven't taken that step yet, Johann.
Well, I can recommend some books.
Yeah, that's cool. His is good.
I have my Plato and my Aristotle right down here next to the desk. So, you know.
Yep.
Oh, David Hume is down there too.
Yeah. Let's have some fun. Let's have, you know, we're talking about RIAs and you're bringing great advice. Johann, you wrote a paper on the Lorax, or a book on the, yeah. Tell me about that paper.
Yeah. So I wrote actually while my oldest daughter, she's 26 now. When she was in middle school, she and I worked together on a couple of papers that we presented at philosophy conferences, and that then we got published. The first one was about the Sneetches.
Yeah.
The star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon theirs. So stars weren't so big; they were really so. Anyway, I'll stop. But we did that one. That was published in a conference proceedings volume. The other one we did on the Lorax was published in, you know, there's these series, there's several series of philosophy and other things. So there's philosophy and Harry Potter, there's philosophy and chess, there's philosophy and, I have philosophy and Johnny Cash on my bookshelf. Cool. But so somebody came to me saying, hey, you and Greta did this paper about the Sneetches. How would you like to do another one for one of these, for a philosophy and Dr. Seuss volume? And so we thought, well, what the heck? And we picked the Lorax as the story we wanted to work on. And yeah, the basic idea that we came up with is that, you know, where a lot of folks understand the Lorax as an environmental story, we thought it was actually a business ethics story.
Cool.
That the Onceler, who is the character who's telling the story, starts this, you know, he finds the truffula trees, and he realizes that he can make a product with them. And he lets his greed essentially overrun the ability of the truffula trees to regenerate. And so he destroys the truffula tree species, I guess, or almost. And so it's a business ethics thing. It's about, you know, maintaining your the sources you need, treating your supply chain with some kind of respect, and understanding that your business is not, and the product that you're trying to make is not the only value. Right, that you have to have space for other stuff, for other considerations, stakeholders.
Yeah.
The brown barbaloots, for example. You can't forget the brown barbaloots in your pursuit of profits from making needs. So yeah, so that was, I mean, it was amazing. It was a lot of fun to work with my daughter on those two projects.
That's cool.
And you know, she's the only kid was the only kid in the middle school who had published academic articles. So
yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Yeah, very cool. You also, I read something about bioengineered foods. Does that, these, so you and I got to know each other a few weeks ago, right? Found you on LinkedIn. You had an interesting background. I thought maybe it'd be a great story for the listeners. And then as we started to chat a couple of weeks ago, I knew you were an interesting person. I had no idea how interesting you are. And so we started to dig in and get the research done, getting ready for our conversation today.
Uh-huh.
Lorax, business ethics, bioengineered foods. How does this stuff weigh into, even things with Horizons?
Well,
Still
yeah,
impacting today?
yeah, I think it's important to ask questions, right? That's what a philosopher has to say that. And that's sort of,
Yeah.
I think I lose my blazer badge if I don't say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did a pair of articles actually on genetically modified foods. And one was about the business ethics side of it, and the other was about the sort of other ethical factors. And I, oddly enough, I guess, for somebody who's in the industry, I came down in favor of continuing to work on, at least, bioengineering, genetic modification. I think that some of the concerns are overblown, and some of the others can be managed. But that does put me in the minority in the sustainable investment industry. Most folks in the industry are staunchly opposed to genetic modification of, especially of food organisms, and other things like nuclear power. That tends to be a touch point too. Most of our clients presume that we won't have nuclear power or genetically modified food organisms in their portfolios. Consequently, we don't, because it's not my values that drive our decisions well, for the most part, but it's the client's values that really drive what we put in their portfolios. Now, because we are pretty upfront about who we are and what our values are, that tends to be relatively easy. We haven't had to turn away a potential client in a while because our values just didn't fit. Yeah. One thing that I do want to always have to mention this is that the lawsuit, there we go, the lawsuit that established the right to marriage, regardless of gender, in New Mexico, was Griego v. Oliver. And my partner, Kimberly Griego Kyle, was that Griego. She and her now wife, Rose Griego, they were one of, I think, 4 couples that sued a county clerk and won. And so, we don't hide that fact. We're proud of that. And so it's probably the case that somebody who is not comfortable with lesbian, gay, so on, is going to see that on our website. It's going to see that on our materials, and is going to go find somebody else to work with. Sure. So there is a self-selection that happens there, but once folks get in the door, once they do start having that conversation with us, there are some things that most of our clients expect, that we make a point of excluding from portfolios. But then beyond that, it can be, very fine-grained. We can get way down into the nitty-gritty with some of our clients on precisely, I'm fine with this industry as a whole, but this particular company in that industry, got to keep them out. Yeah. We can do that for some of our clients, at least we can. Yeah. I love the alternative that you and Kimberly create for people, because I think, too often they don't know what's in the fund they're investing. You guys, with full transparency and, a very pure mission, Johann, I'm a better guy for knowing you. I think a lot of people listening, be better people, or maybe you create a path. You've carved a path
that, and with help of people like George and, and others on that side of the industry, that opens up opportunity for people who have the, I don't know, I don't know if it's ethics, but beliefs and values that you share with us today. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody who's listening, are you're good with having a conversation and, imparting your wisdom on them?
What wisdom I have.
You have some wisdom, my friend. You have some wisdom.
Well, Socrates said, actually, I'm the wisest man in Greece because I know that I know nothing, right?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I was saying something, I was making a joke to my wife the other night, and I said, as Socrates said, oh, never mind. And she said, he didn't say that anywhere near often enough.
How long have you guys been married?
31 years this winter.
Yeah,
we've been together for 34.
Awesome.
We met in the first semester of our freshman year at St. John's College here in Santa Fe. Yeah. And we've been together ever since. So, and now you know precisely how old I am too.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I'll do the math after we're done. Otherwise, I'll lose track of the conversation. But yes, now I can understand why she would exchange that sentiment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not often enough. I'm 15 years into marriage. My wife's been saying it for probably half of that, at least half of that. So Johann, easiest way to get a hold of you if someone wants to chat, maybe about a soft landing spot. I don't know about that, but certainly it sounds like there's that option, and just tapping into your values and how you created a business around that.
Oh yeah, we hope to be. We've been doing this for a while. Each of us. Kim has a couple years more experience than me, even so, since the late '90s. We've been doing this work for a long time, and we know that we can be a resource for folks, especially folks who are just starting out, or for folks who are that much further ahead of us and who need, again, a soft landing spot. The easiest and best way, take a peek at our website, as I said, Horizons SFS, sustainablefinancialservices.com, or just search for Horizons Sustainable, and we should be the first thing that pops up. Send me an email. There's a bunch of different phone numbers for me on our website. It's easy to get in touch with me. I do have a bit of a, Protestant work ethic problem. So I'm here in the office an awful lot. So it's relatively easy to get through to me. So
yeah, and of course I know you're responsive on LinkedIn as well. That's how we got connected in the first case. Yeah. It's Johann, 2 N's. Johann Klaassen, Klaassen.
That's right. Yeah.
Man.
Like the goose said, double it. When in doubt, double it. Right.
All right. When in doubt, double it.
Yeah, Johann, sorry.
You're
stop me before I sub-reference again.
Yeah, our conversation has been enlightening, right? Because I don't know that a lot of people know that they've got this kind of values-based option available to them, really.
No, it's amazing. One of the biggest problems that we have as professionals is convincing other professionals that it's okay to do this. That that it's not simply a way to lose money compared to other indexes or whatever. That it's not that it's not automatically a violation of your fiduciary duties to take values into consideration. So many investment advisors believe that, and it's not the case. And I've argued that in print. And in person, and
well, and to your and Kimberly's credit, leading with that, right? So that people, to your point, will self-select, right? If this isn't what you want to do, that's cool. Go do what you want to do. But also, as I think advisors have a problem with differentiation. We are in an industry that the regulators want to homogenize as much as possible. This is a great differentiator. And no, not the majority of the population has the same value system, but enough of the population does that it's sustainable for them and for you.
Right. Well, and there are periodically, I think I saw the headline go by not that long ago that something like 2/3 of end investors would like to take their values into account when they're investing. Now, not all of those are going to be green, or not all of them are going to be concerned with environmental sustainability and social justice the way our clients tend to be.
Right.
But enough of them would be, and even of those who would sort of take the opposite side, who are going to take the other end of the trade.
Sure.
That's fine. They should be able to do that too. And it's, but so many investment advisors just think that it can't be done or shouldn't be done. That we have, there is a difficulty in getting purchase, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're out there
Johann
swinging though.
Klaassen. Yeah, that's awesome. Given that alternative, Johann Klaassen, Horizons Financial Services. I'm a better person for knowing you. So, and I think our listeners are too. Thank you so much for joining me on RIA Collective today. It's my pleasure to know you better, and I look forward to continuing a relationship with you.
You bet. Thanks.
Yeah. So. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into another episode of RIA Collective. I'm your host, Charlie Van Derven, my guest, Johann Klaassen, Horizon Sustainable Financial Services. If you like what you heard today, please turn us on to your friends. We don't have any big corporate backing or anything like that. So you sharing the podcast helps us get the word out. And do something to impact somebody in a really positive way today, if you would. That'd be awesome. So thank you again for tuning in to RIA Collective.